G'day everyone, welcome back to Shane's Shed. Last time I done a tyre rotation on this, I noticed that the front brakes, the pads were low, so we're going to get in and change those. So I'm going to show you how we do that. Now before we get into it as well, just a word of warning, if you're not really all that mechanically savvy, brakes might not be the job you want to start off on. So yeah, if you're unsure, either seek a mechanic or a friend who knows what the hell they're doing. So yeah, I'm just going to run through it. It's not terribly complex. It's pretty much the same as every other set of brakes, so you shouldn't have any dramas there. But yeah, I just wanted to put that word of warning out because this is your brakes and they're kind of important. So if you need a bit of extra advice as well, I'd recommend getting a good workshop manual. Luckily I know the guys at eManual online. There's a link in the description below. I use their manuals to get torque specs and basically figure out a lot of jobs that I might be unsure of how to do at the start. So I'll read through those. Really good bay addition to your bay tools. So yeah, check that out. So if you make a purchase through the link below, the channel will get a bit of a kickback as well. So it'll be a win-win for everyone. So anyway, let's get into this. So with the car jacked up, I'd always recommend throwing something solid on there like a car stand as well. That way, if anything happens to your jack, it's not going to drop down on you. Safety first, most times. Anyway, alright, so we're just going to rip this wheel off. I'm just using the 21mm socket just on the rattle gun. So if you don't have a rattle gun, at least crack those bolts off before you lift the tyre off the ground. It'll make things a lot easier on yourself. But if you've got a battery powered rattle gun, you don't have to worry about it. They come straight off. So wheels off, and we'll just have a look in that little telltale hole. And if we can focus, there you go. So you can see that bit there is the pad. Now I always look at when the pad is worn down to about the same thickness as its backing plate. That's when I know, basically I make a mental note for the next service, it's time for a change. Yeah, and if you do that, you'll always have plenty of brake pad left. So it's on the caliper, we've got bolt up the top, bolt down the bottom. So I'm going to loosen off that bottom one. I'm going to swing the whole caliper up and we can get to the pads. So just for reference as well, these bolts are a 14mm, and I'll dig up the torque spec a little bit later when we put it all back. So this is all part of the caliper slide, this bolt. So with that removed, just as easy, just to flip the caliper straight up like that. So you can see that that inner pad has a lot more wear than the outer pad. I find it's kind of typical because you've got the piston pushing on this side and the slide wants to pull it back. So sometimes you've got a little bit of a sticky slide. That's what you'll expect to see. So we'll pull it all apart, make sure it's all free. You can generally do that from just there as well. So that's like one hand, so that's pretty free. There's no issues there. Sometimes it might be a bit difficult just to get your fingers in there. Just a screwdriver in there. You'll often prise it straight out, no problem at all. Makes life a lot easier. You can see as well that there's nothing holding that rotor on once your wheel's off. So I use Bendix pads when I can. For this particular car, this is a front wheel drive 2.4 litre 2010 Outlander. So they're a DB1441 GCT. So yeah. And we've got in there some little clips which I haven't seen where they come from on this particular one. So what we can do is give everything a bit of a clean up. We'll push the caliper, push the piston back in the caliper because we will need the extra space with the new pads. So in order to get that piston back, I normally just use a clamp. You can use specific tools to push these back, but I always find that this works just fine. Sometimes I may need to go to a different style of clamp if this runs out of thread, which it's just going to a little bit, but I can back it off and get it back in a little. It's always nicer when you've got the spot-on tools to do the job, but this will do in a pinch. So while you're pushing this back as well, there's a lot of brake fluid getting pushed back through the system, so keep an eye on your reservoir so you don't overflow it. And that is pretty much all the way back. So that is ready to go. We're just going to give all these points a clean up, and we'll start putting it all back together. So to clean these up, we can just pry these little clips out. There's kind of just not really much holding them in place apart from themselves. Pull them out, give them a bit of a wire brush up all through there. Give a wire brush in the spots where they sit, just to clean it all up. Got top and bottom as well, so remember, once you pull these out, they need to go back in as well. So before I shove these little clips on, I'll just give them a little bit of a coat of some brake grease. So just on these spots where the pads make contact with, don't need much. And we'll just push that back into place. And yeah, same with the bottom one. The brake grease can just help with a little bit of brake noise. Sometimes yeah, they might get a bit noisy. This sort of stuff can tend to help out. And push those in. New pads. All in all, changing your brake pads is a fairly quick job. While we're unwrapping this as well, try not to get any of the brake grease on the friction surface itself. But brake pads sometimes are marked with, or they're slightly different from the inside and outer. These ones, exactly the same. So they just push straight in. Obviously make sure you get the friction material facing the disc. Kind of important not to put a mask about. So those in place, it's just a matter of whacking our slide back down. This is why it was important to push that piston back in, otherwise she wouldn't fit over there. A little bit of brake grease on the slide. Now, one of those things, you don't need much at all. Make sure that that rubber boot sits back over the way it's supposed to. And we tighten it up, and I'll go get the torque spec. And before we tighten that up as well, so you can just see, so I'm not too stressed about the slide, it's nice and free to move. That's the main thing, as long as that caliper can move the way it's supposed to, so when that piston pushes this way, it pulls that bit that way. Yeah, and that way you ensure you get nice even pad wear. So really our final thing now is just to torque down this bolt. Now the torque spec is 44 Newton meters. It is plus or minus 5 Newton meters. Now interesting, that torque spec, it's only for my little torque wrench as well. So my bigger torque wrench only goes down to 60. So I have to crank this one up a bit. And we're on to 44 Newton meters. So it's not hugely tight. I'll double check that one anyway. Yeah, not super tight. You can put Loctite on these bolts if you want. I always found if you do them up to the correct torque spec, you shouldn't have to, they should stay in place. And that's pretty much it for each side. Before you go driving anyway, give the brake pedal a pump, because that'll close that piston up. You might be able to get it on camera actually. So you should have been able to see that piston bay coming out and moving the caliper back into place. So that's all good. We'll bolt the wheel back up, move on the other side. So basically, as far as we're concerned now, we've pumped that brake pedal, we've got the bay piston back where it needs to be in the caliper. Then put the tyre on and do the other side. Now earlier I mentioned about the reservoir, so that is, because of that's been pushed back, it's actually quite full. I do need to suck some brake fluid out before I go to the other side now. It is what it is. You can just use an old syringe or something like that just to suck that fluid out. It's not a big deal. Just get it down to the max mark, because at the moment if I do the other side it's going to spill out the brake reservoir, which is not ideal because brake fluid doesn't really like paint much, so it'll eat the hell out of it. Yeah, pretty much it, guys. It's not rocket science. I do recommend bedding in procedures for brake pads. These Bendix ones have got this stripe on them. Apparently you don't have to bed them in. It's not as critical. So yeah, we don't get too stressed about it. It's a good idea as well when you've got the brake pads off to measure your brake rotor thickness. I don't have a problem with this. These are pretty even. There's no lips, they're hardly worn at all, so I'm not going to get too stressed about those. Yeah, basically what you want is checking for a minimum thickness. Now you'll often find, I can't turn it, but there'll be a minimum thickness printed on the disc. It's somewhere. It'll either be along one of these faces or along the edge of the rotor here. So yeah, if you need to do that, that's what you need to look for. So anyway, I'm going to go put this wheel back on. I'm going to go do the other side and it'll be job done. So if you found a bit of use out of this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you're feeling generous, there's a super thanks button. You can throw a few bucks my way if you really feel like it. It's no big deal. Also, if you like what I do on the channel, please consider becoming a channel member. You'll get early access to all my content. I do a little bit of extra content, behind the scenes sort of stuff, any outtakes, any funny shit that I come up with when I'm doing this. Yeah, because I do make mistakes, but I save that just for the members. So yeah, I've already got Dave, Byron, Rob and Jay as members, so yeah, please consider joining them. It's pretty cheap. With all that, I'll let you go. Don't forget, if you need repair manuals, check the description below. You get the links there, and it throws a few bucks my way as well as a bonus. So yeah, it's a win-win. Anyway, thanks very much. I'll see you later.